Hello, rodeo fans, and welcome to the 13th episode of the Short Round, the official podcast of the Canadian Professional Rodeo Association. I'm your host, Wacey Anderson. Once again, stoked to be joined by my buddy Clay Creasy. Clay, what's going on, buddy? Another week. We're getting closer to June. Kind of the busy season's approaching, but we're kind of getting there. I think it's kind of you can feel it starting to build up.
Yeah, for sure. I think we keep saying that in a
Yeah, I
few of
know.
these
Yeah,
episodes,
right. I
right?
know. It
Like
seems
it's
like it.
building, it's building. We're all excited. It's
So
it's
close.
good that way and everything. And yeah, we there was a weekend off for the pro rodeos. There was
Mhm.
some events that happened. I know they had the Hoover Hayes Memorial Steer Wrestling Jackpot last weekend, which means a lot to a lot of people and
Mhm.
brings out a lot of the best in a lot of those guys. I
It's cool.
talked
That's
to
cool. The how that event's been able to like build and keep on going. Like it's obviously how much Hoover meant to the steer wrestling like group of people in Canada. So it's cool to see that evolve and become what it is now.
Yeah, Hoover was great. I mean, I high school rodeoed when JD and Rowdy were going. So I mean
Hmm.
it didn't matter if you were a steer wrestler. Hoover was incredible to everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
he'd slap everybody on the back and smile and yeah, they were just you were always you felt really good around
Hmm.
Hoover for
Well, one rodeo we haven't really got a chance to recap was the Drayton Valley Pro Rodeo that had happened. I guess would be 3 weeks ago now. By the time the show comes out, I guess, right? Am my weeks right? 3 weekends from now. Anyways, um, it was kind of an interesting like after things shook out. Like we had a lot of veterans kind of get their first checks of the year. Like guys like Curtis Cassidy and Mike Solberg kind of found their way into the winning circle, and even Jeremy Bueller and Dustin Bird cracked out and smoked a 3.9. So I mean, it was a pretty awesome weekend of rodeo in Drayton Valley, but it's kind of maybe a wake up call to some of the younger guys that you can never count out the veterans, the guys who've been going hard for a long time, that they're not to be taken lightly.
Yeah, if Curtis is entered, I mean, you're never going to count him out. He's going to come across that line. He knows those setups. He knows how to bulldog in those kinds of deals. And
Mm,
Mike, I know he got on a horse they call Chin Lee that's mostly been in the bronc ride. And actually I got on that horse in 2014. It was the last year they had the amateur
yeah.
rodeo there before it became a pro rodeo. And I got on him as a re-ride, hadn't had any idea what he was. It was my first rodeo back from an ankle injury, hadn't gotten on any
Hmm.
practice. Asked one of the kids there at the rodeo what he was. He was, oh yeah, he's good, he's good. And I made the whistle, but he threw me over the front, and then I think he must have hit my feet as I come, and I mean full scorpion, like kicked myself in the back of the head, and I was just like,
Dang.
okay, yes. So yeah, I saw in the recap there they talked about how the Bronc Riders didn't like him. I can't say he's my favorite either, but yeah, it looks like in the bareback ride, Mike had a really good go with him. So
Yeah. Well, and just jumping back to Curtis quickly, like I think he's gonna have a bit of a chip on his shoulder this year, just having missed the CFR, obviously, with like getting injured and all that kind of stuff didn't really help his case. But I think he's gonna really, especially going back to Edmonton, he's really gonna push hard. And we're gonna see him get back for his like 38th NFR or whatever, or CFR or whatever number he's on now.
yeah, when Curtis is going, and I know he's got those good horses. I mean, Curtis is a hand.
Hmm.
I think I saw he ended up getting another one off of the quarter horse track that probably will crack out somewhere along the lines here. And Tyson, I mean, they just you can't beat that horse in
He's
especially in those kinds
amazing,
of
man.
setups. But
Oh,
yeah, no, he's primed for another good year. I expect that yeah, the young guys or anybody else is going to have to fight pretty hard to get past him.
100%. Well, and another guy too I wanted to mention was Tanner Eno. He tore his bicep off at the end of last year, and he's a guy that he's so much talent and your rod's so good, and he's been kind of bitten by the injury bug the last couple of years. He got hurt at the CFR in 2020, 2022, I guess it was. He got knocked out in the shoot, and then was
Yeah.
having another great year in 2023 and had that bicep injury. So I'm really hoping we can see Tanner have a full season healthy because when he's healthy, he's tough to beat. And he rides so well. He's one of our and he's I guess he's kind of falling into that veteran category now. He's been around for a few years, but yeah, it was good to see him get the win in Drayton Valley, and hopefully he can kind of keep rolling through and keep healthy throughout the. It's kind of a grueling season, I think, especially in Canada. Like I know, like in the U.S. they rodeo hard, but a lot of the guys in Canada they PBR and they go to the CPR rodeos, and there's a lot of events throughout the year. And by the time August comes around, it's pretty thinned out with the crowd of guys going because everybody's pretty banged up. So, anyways, hopefully Tanner can have a good healthy season.
For sure. No, I've actually Tanner, he's from Coronation, and
Hmm.
he actually got me a gig when he was 3 years old. My mom was teaching power skating, and
Oh
she said,
yeah,
"This kid, he doesn't want to really do it, and he might like it if you're there and stuff." And I remember right from the first practice, he was pushing me around because we talked rodeo and stuff,
yeah.
and his parents, Darren and
Oh
Lori,
man,
there.
they're the best. They're so
They
awesome.
are, and I mean, Lori did her best to keep him out of rodeo and into hockey for as long
Yeah,
as she
yeah.
could. But yeah, no, I really hope he can piece it all together because he
Hmm.
does ride so well, and
Yeah.
he takes care of himself. He looks after
He works
things.
so hard. Like he puts in the work outside the arena, which I feel like, and I mean, there's more and more guys doing that across the board. Just that's the way rodeos evolve. But he's one of those guys who just he's putting in the work to be the best that he can be. So hopefully that, yeah, like you say, he can put it all together.
Yeah, and one of the coolest little practice pens out there.
Oh
I
right,
love the
yeah,
old wooden setup they got
yeah,
out there. I
man,
mean,
it's so good.
he's a carpenter and he's put it to work there building himself his own practice pen. I mean, it's yeah, when the chutes were wood and the men were made of steel. So
Yeah,
it's
the good old days. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And yeah, I played hockey against Tanner. He is a good hockey player, so it's funny that he didn't like keep pursuing that. But it's good to see him in the arena. We need guys like him kind of hanging around. Um, yeah, I think that kind of wraps up our Drayton Valley recap. Unless there's anything else you want to chat about, Clay.
You know, the one thing I just wanted to talk about is I think Drayton was really it's an interesting time in pro rodeo because we're seeing a lot of rodeos shifting back to the pro circuit or
Hmm.
just starting up and becoming pro rodeos and when Drayton Valley did it that really wasn't the norm.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean the 10 years before Drayton Valley turned pro, the association really seemed to be struggling to keep rodeos. A lot of
Yeah.
them were kind of fallen by the wayside. Either the Saskatchewan ones or the BC ones were going to go into their respective amateur associations and everything like
Hmm.
that. But actually was chatting with Tyson Peach and asked him, well, how did that transition go? And he said, well, it was pretty simple. I mean, after 2014 and 2015, oil was 35 bucks a barrel, and the amateur association just kind of shut it down.
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
so they were able to step in, but the good thing is the way the CPRA had set up their stock contracting rules is there was an opportunity for the Duffy family to
Hmm.
get their card by bringing in two new rodeos, and they brought in Drayton Valley and then that fall rodeo in Medicine Lodge.
Right. Yeah.
And in doing so, again, they added a contractor that I think really has done a lot for the association
Hmm.
and rodeo all in general. And it was a great opportunity for them and again has become a great rodeo here.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
just wanted to give a shout out to that crew.
Yeah, it's been cool. It's been cool to see it like kind of progress and become what it is today. And it kind of ties into the guest for this week's show. It's kind of a rodeo production themed show. We got my buddy Kynan Vine coming by. You know Kynan really well too, Clay. So yeah, we'll throw it to the interview with Kynan and we'll chat some rodeo production and kind of what's on the horizon when it comes to that stuff next. And we'll see you on the other side of the interview. This has
You
been
bet.
episode 13 of the short round. Welcome back to the short round. I'm stoked to welcome this week's guest, one of my oldest buddies, I guess, in the rodeo world. He's been a bullfighter. He's produced some of the biggest rodeos in the world and has been around the game a long time. Welcome to the Short Round Podcast, Kynan Vine. What's up, dude?
Hey, Wacey, thanks for having me on, man. It's
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, it'll be good. It'll be good to catch up and kind of see what you've been up to and what you got cooking, and talk a bit about some like super fun events we got coming up, kind of in Pro Rodeo Canada and outside of all that. So it'll be good, man.
Yeah.
What's the winter been like? What have you been keeping busy? I guess it's spring. We're into spring now, almost summer, but what do you keep busy with all winter?
Well, we had a baby this winter, so it was a busy winter. We went to I was in Denver.
Hmm.
I was part of the production team for the Denver National Western Stock Show and Rodeo down there. And that's a haul, man. Like, I don't know if anybody has been a part of those big winter rodeos, those big tournament style rodeos, but when you start getting into the 20 plus performances, it's a grind. But really cool event. If you haven't been, it's the production is actually next level, and great crew down there. So I spent January in Denver, and then we went to New Zealand because my wife Megan was photographing a friend's wedding, and so we were over there for a couple weeks, and she was 8 months, just a little over 8 months pregnant. So it's a bit touch and go, but we did it, and it was awesome. And came home, had a baby. So yeah, the winter was busy, and it's funny because I was just talking to somebody the other day. I said it must be spring. May is here because now everybody is thinking about their events this summer, and some of them actually aren't that far away, and people start thinking about them now. So now it's really busy, but every day feels like a Monday lately. But it's good. It's good stuff.
That's one thing a guy doesn't like really realize when you're in your competition side of the career, or like you're like even like both in the bullfighting lens. It's like how fast these things creep up. Like once you get to the production side of things, you're like, oh, I got 6 months, or I got this many months, I got a year to figure all this stuff out. And the next thing you know, you're 2 weeks out or 3 weeks out from a huge event that seems like a person doesn't have everything under control, but it usually finds a way to get done.
Oh yeah, man. And yeah, and depending on where you are and what venue and what organization, I mean, some of them are putting on other events. Like when you look at the Calgary Stampede, when I worked at the Calgary Stampede, we were putting on events all year
Yeah.
round. So I mean, Calgary Stampede as compared to some of the other events, definitely planned for the rodeo, chuck wagons, the actual Calgary Stampede, kind of years in advance as far as the big bucket things. But when you work events and you work for an event production organization, you kind of go event to event. And then all of a sudden, everybody goes, oh man, like Stampede's in 2 months. Like, what's going on? Right. And I mean, some of the other ones are closer than that. But yeah, that's kind of the event business, right? And even when you're in the production side of it, it's stock contractor or event producer. You're just going event to event. Like, it's kind of like you look at what
Yeah.
you're doing right now, and then you hop into another event and go, oh man. So I don't know, my style. I've been like this for all my life, I guess, but I'm a planner. Like I like planning way out and just getting things taken care of, and everybody knows what's going to happen, and let's just set the plan way in advance, and then we all can work towards that rather than, kind of making those decisions or planning last minute.
Yeah,
So
that never
it's
works out for anybody.
no, and time again, people learn the lesson the hard way. And I said, it's funny. I was listening to, I can't remember what it was the other day, and they said, a beginner or a rookie, they are a beginner or a rookie because they learn hard lessons maybe for the first or second time. But a master is a master because they've learned hard lessons hundreds of times. And I said, like, that's actually true, man. Like, you learn the lesson the hard way when you don't prepare well in advance, and um, the result is the same every time. So,
Well, and especially in like the rodeo production world, you have like there's so many variables outside of just what you can plan and like think of. Like there's weather and there's live animals and there's groups of like large groups of people, and there's just you just can't like account for everything. So you got to be able to like respond on your toes. Like an example would be, I remember the first time I came down to the Lethbridge for rodeo that you guys started, when you had to work the ground and like get it dialed in. Like that morning before the slack, there was no way they were running barrels, but you guys found a way to get the ground dialed in, and you're having had the barrel racing on time pretty much for the slack. So being able to adapt and be quick on your feet is such a huge part of it too.
well, and that was unforeseen that we were going to see
But
that much
yeah,
rain.
yeah.
And then we did see a lot more rain even that weekend, and we're able to still thankfully have the event, and it was safe and it was successful. But that also came from, several months of preparation ahead of that and getting the ground to where it was. And I often go back to that and say, hey, if we wouldn't have done all that prep work for 3 months ahead of time, 2 months ahead of time, we wouldn't have been having a rodeo. Like if we would
Yeah.
have just worked with the ground up that morning,
Oh my god.
it would have been a disaster. But I've seen that happen. I've seen that before too. And
Goes to those hard lessons is probably something a person like that you probably would had happen to you before, and you've like learned your lesson, and now you find your ways to adapt to make sure you're prepared this time around. It's like anything, even on the competition side.
Yeah, well, it was funny because I was doing an interview with Terry Mason for the Canadian Cowboy Country about, this is before CFR and kind of a pre-CFR conversation and about producing events. And I said, like, my first experiences with producing events, my family, my dad actually was one of the founding members of the Box Springs Rodeo. And so I was a part of the Box Springs Rodeo and going and volunteering as a little kid, just weed whipping and putting toilet paper in outhouses or whichever. But one of my first jobs was helping the guy doing the tractor, and yeah, like we're kind of just a DIY crew, obviously, but it was what's a certain amount of water you need with the water truck, and what are we going to do? Are we going to harrow it? Or are we going to rototill it? Or are we going to use the farm cultivator? Like, and so I was like 12, 13, 14 years old, and then driving tractor and in the arena, and I said, so that's the kind of stuff though that, yeah, they put on the 14 or 15-year-old kid on the rodeo committee, and it's like nowadays you can't do that. Like that's the most important job. So
Yeah.
but I'm glad I learned that
Yeah.
20 some years ago now, right? But it was yeah, that was kind of how I got my start in rodeo production, as Box Springs Rodeo, and just doing whatever needed to be done.
Well, and that's kind of where I wanted to start with all this is going back to that time. I think a lot of people who will listen to this and are familiar with Rodeo Canada kind of know the story of your sorry, as bullfighter and kind of transition to that part. But were you like, when you first like, did you realize that they would be something that become such a big part of your life when you're that age, or were you like just instantly attracted to it? Did you fall in love with it, or like how did you get like kind of to the next step of being like, okay, like I can make a career out of this, or this thing I want to pursue, or like or be involved in at that level?
Yeah, I mean, I was always interested in it. I loved, I was a vice president of the Box Springs Rodeo Committee by the time I was 16 years old, and I loved the process of putting on the rodeos and going in and getting sponsorship and planning and all those things, hiring the contract personnel. I love that part of it. But then as I got older, I was fighting bulls, and obviously that was like the love of my life and the only thing I ever thought I would ever do until I was 50 years old. And at the time I thought that was super old, and then I'd probably just die. But so no, I didn't think like that was a career. I thought that was something you did as a volunteer,
Right.
and you put in some man hours ahead of time, and then for 3 days every, once one weekend a year, you volunteered to put on a rodeo. And but I remember my dad used to fight bulls, and he fought bulls for, Winston Bruce and Calgary Stampede era. And I remember one time being a steer rider, and we were at High River, and Winston came up to me and, was talking to me. He said, "Well, Kynan, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do when you're done this?" And I said, "Well, maybe I'll just take your job, Winston." And, years down the road, by way of a roundabout way, I did take Winston's job. I had Winston's
Yes, yeah.
job. So that's a cool story, but I didn't really mean, for it to go that way. And I went and got, an education, and my education's in business. And I thought, hey, I'm probably going to go and work in a corporate job or in the oil patch in downtown Calgary or something.
Mhm.
I knew I didn't want to, I mean, I knew I wasn't going to be able to fight bulls all my life, and I knew I didn't want to work the oil patch all my life. And so I thought, well, I better go get an education. And then that's kind of, again, like it just kind of came back around to that. But luckily, when the opportunity started coming up, when I went and worked for the, CPRA, Jim Pippolo hired me to come in and work part-time while I was still fighting bulls, and do some marketing stuff, and, help with the website and different things. And then, eventually I ended up becoming the rodeo administrator and was in that role for 5 years with the CPRA. But that kind of came with rodeos coming and saying, "Hey, can you help us put on a rodeo? Shoot boss, can you, whichever." And And so we did, and then we ended up creating and producing what was then called the Grassroots Finals. Jeff Robson and I started that rodeo, which was intended to be the Maple Leaf Circuit Finals, and it kind of fell through with the deal with the PRCA. But we did put on the Grassroots Finals for several years before it then did become the Maple Leaf Circuit Finals. And that was a self-produced rodeo by the CPRA at the time, and I ran it, and so that kind of jumped me back into putting on rodeos, I guess you could say. And yeah, so roundabout way, then ended up going to work for the Calgary Stampede, and it just kind of went from there. So, I didn't see, I couldn't, I can't, if you would have asked me when I was 15 years old, are you going to produce rodeos for a living? I would have said, absolutely no way.
Yeah.
But I did always love it. That was, like we'd go in the parades when I was a little kid. My dad was fighting bulls, and we go to school visits, and I loved getting up there and talking to the kids and telling them all they should come to the rodeo because it was so cool. And I still would do that. Like, you know what I mean? Like if we said, hey, let's go do the school visits for a Weyburn Bronc match, I'd be there because I still think that it's cool to tell kids to go to rodeos because it is cool.
It's
So
such a cool thing, and and even like kind of fast forwarding to like what road rodeo's at right now with like the level of competition there is and stuff. Like it's such a great spot to bring in new fans, and it's exciting. There's good competition. Like production, I think across a lot of the rodeos in Canada has improved so much in the last 5 to 10 years, probably. Like it's becoming like so much more than just kind of a local. But not nothing again. Like we need the volunteers, but it's like there's more emphasis put on the value of production in the rodeo than it's just like, oh, we'll have all the events in this particular order and whatever, right?
yeah, and I think that's an evolution of course, television. Producing an event for television is a lot different than producing an event for a live audience and or with no obligation to television.
Yeah.
And television broadcasts, corporations don't care about the live audience.
No.
So like they don't, and so to be able to meld the two together and have something that still is enjoyable and looks good for the live audience, but then you can seamlessly put it on television. That part is actually, I believe, in even the last 5 years, and especially with the Cowboy Channel. But even before that, when you look at what the Calgary Stampede and the national finals were doing for CBS and CBC, like that kind of changed the dynamics of how rodeos are being produced. But then also technology, and you look at what you're doing, music and just general entertainment and expectations, I guess is the word that I would use, because anybody nowadays can go and they can go to a Roughnecks game in Calgary and see something very entertaining and exciting, and there's music and entertainment, and there's all these awesome elements that they're doing, and it's a good value of a ticket. And then they can go to the Okotoks AAA hockey game and get the same sense of production and music and excitement, so and see kids that are going to go play in the NHL. So everybody, no matter if you're a local rodeo or if you're local bar that's bringing in bands, everybody has had to step up their value that they're providing in entertainment. And so I would say that that's kind of the situation of where it's gotten to for people like me and with my skill set. Is there are committees when you look at Airdrie Rodeo, Merritt Rodeo, Lethbridge Rodeo, that they want to put on a rodeo, and it needs to be a certain way for, again, television. It needs to be a certain way to meet the standards of what the expectations are of their guests. And they are volunteers, and they know that they need some help in that regard to ensure that the product, not the ancillary, food trucks and the cabaret and all the stuff, just the entertainment product that's being I would say molded into that from a rodeo, and so it's been cool because that's become my opportunity in my career, is to come in and help these groups that realize that they need that expertise.
Well, and how important do you think, or how like prevalent has the influence from other sports become? I know, like for you, you've done a lot of kind of went outside of rodeo and produced other events and in other sports, and I think we're seeing more and more stuff from other sports kind of come into the rodeo production entertainment. But how vital is that in like the forward movement, like taking what's working for say like the big sports and kind of moving them? How vital is that?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, and then there's sports, and then there's sports teams and sports entertainment products that have just really, I mean, they've set the bar. And when you look at what Johnny Greco did with the Golden Knights, and then he
Right.
went and did it with the Kraken, and you have projection mapping, and you have a show within the show of professional hockey or basketball or baseball or football. Yeah, it's changed things. And again, people come to a rodeo even now, and they expect more than just to see some bareback riding, saddle bronc riding, and barrel racing. Like, they
Yeah.
expect to see a show,
Mhm.
and the show is, lights, camera, music, action. It's not your traditional sense of the product that we've sold for the last 100 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, as those other sports evolve, and they know too, like, you can't just sell hockey, especially not in your non-traditional markets. You can't sell hockey in
Yeah.
Dallas, you can't sell hockey in Las Vegas, you can't sell hockey in Austria. So what are you going to do, right? And it's the same for rodeo. There's a lot of places where people do love to come to their community rodeo and enjoy it, but not in downtown Houston,
Yeah.
not in San Antonio. They got to have a band. They got to have entertainers. They got to have big production and spend hundreds of thousands. Well, at the end of the day, those big rodeos are spending millions on
Right.
production. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and then people see that and go, well, how come Medicine Hat doesn't have a rodeo like, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then it goes up, the expectation goes up. And so it's like Lethbridge, and when they called and asked if I could come and help them in Lethbridge, and hey, we want to have a tour rodeo and we want to have a pro rodeo again. We haven't had one in 6 years. Can you come and help us out? And I said, yeah, I'm happy to come and help you out. But just so you know, when I put on an event, when I'm part of an event, my expectations for myself is that my event that I'm doing, it doesn't matter if it's the Calgary Stampede or the American or Lethbridge Rodeo, it's going to be the best product we can put out in front of those people. And it's cool to see it come to life and have people go, oh man, we weren't expecting that, but that was
Yeah.
pretty cool, you know?
Yeah.
So
It's crazy, man. Like that's like I think that point about the expectations is a good thing. Like even with how like social media and digital media has changed, like people's attention spans are they're not as long as they used to be, and people are expecting like nonstop action entertainment, and that's such a big thing. Especially and with rodeo too, like we've all been there, and like they can run on. There's lots of contestants, all that kind of stuff. But continually finding ways to keep people engaged so the whole show is like such a vital part of it. This next question is kind of a two-parter. So the first part of it, like what's kind of been the biggest change in rodeo production in the past like 10-15 years, and then past that, what do you think is the next big thing in rodeo production that we're going to see kind of coming through in the next however many years, or think you'll see more people focusing on, or what'll be in demand?
I'd say one of the biggest changes that I have seen just in my time, say 10 years, so 14, which actually doesn't seem that long ago,
Yeah.
but
It's like 10 years.
so again, like, if you just do the comparison, 2014 we were in CFR in Northlands in
Mhm,
Edmonton.
mhm.
Okay. um at the time, things like, a dark house and some spotlights and pyrotechnics were still basically what you needed for a great production. And people would walk away and say, oh, that was cool, the opening was cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're still cool, but that was kind of it. And then they'd flick the lights on and he'd run off a rodeo. And now it's changed. There has to be those elements throughout the show. There has to be different again, like elements of entertainment sprinkled in. You're making characters in different areas that aren't just focused on the rodeo, and so we have what we call entertainers now, or
Yeah.
those types of things, which is great. It's not your traditional rodeo clown situation, but so I would say a heightened production throughout the event is definitely like at a lot of events, but then I'd say the major changes are like video. Video, two things: music and video. And so if you think about that in any form of entertainment and an experiential form of entertainment, that's what people want. Music can evoke any kind of emotion: happiness, sadness,
Yeah.
excited, mad, right? And you watch the most epic movies of all time and the greatest soundtracks you've ever heard, Forrest Gump, or those types of movies. It's the music, right? And so I think the music and the time and attention that has been put into that position and that element has changed rodeo,
Yeah.
because it's also changed in other sports and entertainment. And so that would be definitely a huge thing. And then when you layer in the video and video quality, graphics, leaderboards, and proper headshots of the contestants so people can see their faces before they compete, and have a nice lower third so they know who it is, and great opening videos for these events that are well produced and high quality video, and I mean, it's cool. Like, that's the kind of stuff that you're involved in, and it's like that's changing and shaping a different looking rodeo than people saw 10 years ago, for sure.
And it's something you can
I
like
mean, a big thing 10 years ago would be, hey, let's put together a sizzle reel and get some clips from last year's rodeo and put AC/DC, or Kickstart My Heart and rock and roll.
Yeah.
And it's not like that anymore. It's cinematic. Like,
Yeah.
for the opening video for the CFR, I will spend 3 to 4 months working with Feature Productions and Sean, and Weibo on that, or hire in specific people, whether that's you or Randy Risling or whoever it might be, to create those. And at Calgary Stampede, we got, Mike Little and Shine Light and Cindy Gillies that are spending months putting together, maybe even the year before, putting together a video, a 90-second video. Like, to me, that's wild, but it's also awesome. Like, and
Game.
yeah, and it sets the tone, and it creates actually a face of your brand before people see anything else. And I think that's things that have changed the game, but also I would say they've created kind of a new wave of production people involved, and they've set the standard of what people expect. Again, they set that standard of what people expect when they go to an event, and it's up the game of the announcers and the entertainers, and the event pace has definitely increased. So I would say those are a few things that have changed the face of rodeo, but that also lends itself to, if you can put on a 2-hour rodeo, 2.5-hour rodeo, that kills a lot of birds with one stone, as far as, again, what you said, people's attention spans. You need to be fast paced, and you need to have it has to be under 2.5 hours. Like, it's not acceptable to go over 2.5 hours anymore. And then it has to be cohesive. And so the production is, like I say, it's planned out to the second. At least the ones that I'm involved in, and the ones that I believe are well-run productions, it's planned out to the second. So, but that's for TV and that's for the live audience, which is, like I said, it's great.
Well, and it's a funny line to walk, I would say, because I feel like in rodeo, more than any other sport, like the fans have so much of a voice when it comes to like their opinion on the show. Like you get, it's like they have a lot more access to like the people, like the people kind of organizing it. And like I feel like
Mhm.
rodeo does a good job of like taking in like what the fans are saying and listening to that in a sense. But you got to walk that line of like trying to serve the fan, but also the TV program.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of leads into the second
Yeah,
part of that
yeah.
question is where is it going and what will that look like? I would say something that's been, again, changing and more involved and definitely way more thought and process gone into it in the last 10 years, maybe in the last 3 or 4 years, to be honest
Yeah.
with you, is around our animals and how we participate with them and the dealings of animal activism and legislation and all those things. As rodeo producers and as people in the industry, we spend a lot more time on that subject than we used to, for sure. And I think it will continue to be an issue for us. And at the same time, it could continue to or create opportunity. And how we showcase what we do is, I think what I would say is a reflection of a culture that rodeo represents. Rodeo is a showcase, is a show, an outward show of Western culture, of cowboy culture, of what we do every day on the ranch, or and if not what they're doing on the ranch, just what it means to be a cowboy. And what it means to be a cowboy is to be a steward of the land and a steward of the animals. So I think it is important. People don't think it's important to cater to the voice of the activist. And I agree with that. But I think it's important to understand that our current and future consumer doesn't understand Western culture.
Yeah.
They don't understand what it is to be a cowboy. They don't understand what it is to raise an animal for consumption.
Mhm.
So it's our duty to explain that to them and to have them in a entertaining and upbeat and exciting way, have them leave saying, you know what, I learned something today about being a cowboy, about where my food comes from, and I had a great time. And I think that, like, it might sound weird to say, oh, well, what do you don't think projection mapping is the next big thing? No, not in rodeo, man. Like, that's not it. It's we have a duty to represent an entire culture.
Yeah.
And that for me is my passion of why I'm even still involved, because I believe where I came from and what I was raised in needs to evolve, and it needs a voice that people will listen to, and they will walk away and be happy about it
Yeah.
and excited about it, and they will be advocates with us. And
Mhm.
how do we present that to them? Not by covering it up with a concert, not by some flashy lights and a good opening video, right? We got to tell that story and make it authentic, and leave them saying, man, that was cool.
Yeah.
Especially when you want to go into markets, downtown cities,
Yeah.
in uh, you know, in cities that aren't aligned with our viewpoints, and people that are going to attend the event specifically because they don't align with our viewpoints, and we got to change their minds.
Yeah.
So I think it's a bigger responsibility than people actually probably realize. And especially when you're going into big markets that are not traditional rodeo markets. Like when it's cool, go into San Diego and go, they're gonna have a rodeo in Phoenix at the baseball field there. And I mean, even wherever, it doesn't matter. New York City, Boston, Edmonton, man. These are not traditional rodeo markets. So it's our responsibility to do a good job of it and portray our sport in the best light.
Well, and I think it's kind of goes hand in hand with like how I feel like Western culture and the Western lifestyle has never been more popular in the mainstream. And I feel like that's it's a good way for us to leverage that interest and then kind of educate those people kind of in that way you're talking about. But I think that's become that's a big aspect around rodeo and bull riding and all this stuff right now, is that there's like so much outside interest that we haven't had in the past however many years, which is going to have a big influence on how we can kind of take that next step as a whole, right?
Well, and it's interesting. You're always learning, even when you don't realize that you're gonna, I mean, that's the whole point of any, to me, if you're not learning something, changing, growing, whichever, then you're done. But you're always learning these things. And so this summer in Lethbridge, in the opening, I like to feature a local person, whether that's a community member or cowboy, it doesn't matter. So obviously the obvious ones are Corblund and whoever from Lethbridge. But Dwayne Kessler came to me and said, "Hey, would you mind if we tried featuring Butch Little Mustache?" And he said, he's a big figure and has been a big cowboy figure in his Blackfoot community and obviously the local community of Lethbridge and surrounding areas. And yeah, man, that's great. And so what do we want to do? Said, well, we're gonna bring him out there and we're gonna talk about how he's a real cowboy and he's a rodeo cowboy. So Dwayne said, well, why don't we get him to bring his horse? I said, sure. So we just kind of came together and we wrote a script for it, and he came out there with his dog and rode around, and people loved it, and then they posted that on the Cowboy channel. And then kind of like it started to go on social media, and the comments from people were like, man, that's so cool. And like, that's awesome. And Butch is a real deal cowboy. And so it just got me thinking. I'm like, man, people, like you said, people are interested in that. And people are interested to know that rodeo cowboys, for the most part, are real cowboys. Like they're, I mean, there's some rodeo cowboys that are rodeo cowboys only for sure. But a lot of them go home on Monday and they go out and saddle up a horse and ride off to check cows and or farming or something to do with agriculture. And so when we were putting together the openings for the CFR, I said to Nikki, I'm like, man, I think we gotta try something with this, the Cowboys. And I said, and we gotta shine a spotlight on the fact that these guys here are the best there is in rodeo, but they're real deal cowboys. And they're not putting on an act. And that was a cool opening. That was probably one of my favorite openings I've ever put together. And those, and again, people say, man, that was cool. Like that was cool to see those guys ride out there with their,
that was awesome.
shotgun chaps on and their bull whips, and Tyler Craft's out there with his bull whip and those horses. And it was awesome, man. And I said, like, that's the point, is like, people need to realize that we are cowboys. And this is not, it's kind of funny. I was thinking about that. Think about that even with like you and I had lots of those conversations with Ted and and I said, man, I just believe that like you get far enough out of it, it's like me fighting bulls, and people don't know that I fought bulls, professionally. And 2 years ago, Levi Hale got knocked out at Airdrie Rodeo, and I was shoot bossing, and so I stepped in to help Travis James fight bulls, and we were, I don't know, 2 or 3 bulls in, and he comes over, man, you're pretty good. Like, you ever get your pro card or anything? I'm like, oh
man,
I'm old. I'm old.
Yeah, been there, buddy.
Yeah, I have my pro card, buddy. But anyways, and so I think about that, and it's like with you and Ted and what you guys are doing, and kind of how well known you are, now through what you've been doing with media and your podcast and becoming that figure in rodeo in our Western culture. But people don't realize that you're a champion bull rider, and that you grew up ranching and riding horses and roping at brandings, and your family still does that. That's what they do for a living. And you know what I mean? And so to me, it's kind of funny because they're like, oh, people think we're characters and we're cowboys on the weekend and we put on a cowboy hat for a show. And it's like, no, this is just what we are.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's why I was always like, hey, Teddy, like, you guys got to friggin' get on some bulls or something, show people that you're like the real deal, right?
We don't mess around. Well, and that's
because people forget. right?
Well,
They don't know, or they don't know. They never knew you in that life, right?
yeah.
And in rodeo, especially bull riding, there's almost only so much rubber on a tire. So
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like you can't ride bulls until you're 50, and then everybody goes, "Oh, Wacey Anderson was a good bull rider." It's like that's flash in the pan, man.
Yeah.
And it
So
doesn't
much
change.
on that.
It doesn't change that the fact that you're a cowboy,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, for sure.
So
Well,
you
and
know, anyways, that's so long story short, I do believe like in the future, we just have to lean into that. Like we
yeah.
have to lean into telling those stories and showcasing our cowboys for what they are, but also ensuring that we're doing good things and we're making sure people see us doing good things as far as being stewards of the animals. We choose to use the animals for competition. We choose to use the animals for our sport. So we have to go above and beyond to take care of them and to actually be leaders in how animals are meant to be taken care of. That's again where we showcase that we're the best at that. Like somebody that lives on an acreage that has a horse, no offense to them, but they are not better at taking care of their horse or should not be better than somebody that does that for a living.
Yeah.
Right?
There's like 30 or 40 bucking horses running around the yard.
Yeah. So, and the same, the stock contractors, like
Yeah,
there
right?
shouldn't be anybody better at caring for an animal than a stock contractor, but we
No,
have to let
sure.
people know that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I'm glad you brought up the opening of the CFR. I wanted to ask you about that, where because like for me too, I found even like across the whole CFR last year, like, those openings were some of the coolest ones I've seen at any like professional rodeo or any rodeo I've been involved in or at in my lifetime. And I want to know kind of where some of those rank on like your career highlight list, or if any of them make it, or kind of what are some of those things on your career highlight list that you've been able to do and be part of in your like production and rodeo career, I guess.
yeah, I think, I mean, again, the openings are especially in an indoor building. So when you take CFR or wherever, Houston or Denver or San Antonio, like the openings are something cool that I think we can get kind of focus in on because it's how we kick off the rodeo. And um, for me, and a lot of people still talk about, oh man, the opening at CFR and Kelly Armstrong came flying off that bull and he was on that harness. And I'm like, I was there, man. I remember that. That was cool. Right. And so it is like those are moments that you can create that people won't forget. They might not remember a 82-point bareback ride in round number 3, right? But they will remember something big that happened at the start of the rodeo. And so, I think you can't really lose focus on that because it is important, but at the end of the day, sometimes it is only 5 minutes of the 2.5 hour rodeo too. So you can't get too focused on it. But we did some pretty cool openings this year. We did some, you know, uh, again, like I think
One
over
of
years,
the provincial intro was so cool too, and you gave all the guys their provincial flag, and
yeah,
just
so that was again, that was just like I think one of the evolutions of the openings at Red Deer in the last 4 or 5 years too is again it's a bit of a mixture, but like again, how I like to do things is to start planning way ahead. And so we start spitballing, Nikki Flundra, obviously, and myself, and then we bring in Brett Gardner and Sean Morton, and feature productions for the video side of things, and all these different people, and start spitballing ideas, months in advance, months, and start talking to the pyro guys about like maybe what they could do and whichever. And so some of those ideas, like they really did evolve and took a bit of a group effort to come up with and then refine them and they're a big lift, like getting all the contestants to come down out of the grandstands into the arena. 120 some contestants, like that was a lot of work, and that's a first performance, man. Like that was cool, right? But it's different. It was different than what we've normally done, which is they all run in and we introduce them by event. But we want to try something different, and
Yeah.
then the NFR qualifying contestants. We're like, well, again, we can bring them all in and say that they're going to the NFR, but how is that applicable to our audience? It's applicable to our audience for people to resonate with what province they come from, because
Yeah.
they come from Manitoba all the way to British Columbia. That's pretty cool, right? And so that was kind of that idea. And again, like that was a group effort of what I would call a group of creative people, as opposed to just putting the onus on one person or two people to come up with all that stuff. And like I said, I think that's again some of the things that are changing in rodeo is you have production people, creative people, people that have a bit different backgrounds that are coming together and
Yeah.
putting those together. And so yeah, that one was cool. The cowboy one was probably one of my favorite ones for sure.
Yeah, that was really cool.
You know, and um I I I would say my favorite opening that I've ever done was for sure at the American Rodeo. Just because we got to like pile it on. We had a stage that had pyrotechnics built right into the stage, and we had a 200-piece marching band play the anthem, and we had the 40 by 60-foot flag being held by military and the cowboys and cowgirls, and you know, I mean, which is cool. Like
Yeah,
in
yeah.
I would say in Texas, especially, if you think you've overdone it on patriotism, you haven't done enough. So,
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
but
that's true, man.
so it's cool, right? But so that was a big opening. That was cool, and yeah, I think. But we've done some in the last few years too, especially again, like I think about the music selections and the opening video and the opening video to the opening video at CFR and kind of how that's evolved. Like even what we did this year with you, like that kind of stuff, it just sets the tone, man, and gets people gets them on the edge of their seat before it
Yeah,
even starts, right? And
yeah.
uh, you know, Sean Morton, he's he's like a Swiss Army knife of rodeo, man. The guy, he's done pyrotechnics. He's done pyrotechnics at the Olympics. He used to be a bullfighter. He's, you know, an amazingly talented music director. But because of people like him and having those different, you know, I guess backgrounds, kind of like me, he sees it differently. So when you ask him to put together the music for the opening or for an opening video, he's not just thinking about some cool tune that he heard, right?
Yeah, there's a story behind it.
Yeah, and I don't know. At the end of the day, it's like I've said this lots to Sean or Nikki or you or whoever, Brett Gardner. We probably think way too much about 5 minutes of the entire rodeo, but
But but you say, like you say, it sets the tone. Like it can it can really have a great effect on how people take the show in, right? Like if the opening sucks or it's not as, it doesn't go off like how the person wants, like that just sets the tone for the whole night. But if you come out of an opening and your heart's pumping and you're ready to rumble, like it's gonna kind of tee up a really great night of rodeo or whatever you're doing.
well, and again, it's just like any entertainment, and especially now when we're selling that product to people for a premium price or whichever is like I said, it's a group effort and coming up with those things. But my approach always is like fans first, and like leave your own stuff out of it. You know, I don't do it for what I want or what I want to accomplish for what I think was cool. Like if I did what I thought was cool because I think it's cool is we would just blow up pyro for 5 minutes and then start fucking horses, right? Like, but that's what I like to do,
Yeah.
right? So it's like again, you got to do what the people want to see, right? And you got to know your demographics. Demographics at the CFR are still an older crowd,
Mhm.
and so they want to see cool cowboy stuff, or they want to get personal with the contestants and know that we've flew the BC flag and the Manitoba flag because they came from Manitoba to watch the rodeo,
Yeah,
and
yeah. They came to
that's the
the
kind of stuff.
Martian.
That's why they do it at the NFR. Why do they do it every night at the NFR? Because there's 10,000 people sitting in there from Texas. That's why, right?
No, it's true, man. It's cool.
So
Cool,
Yeah.
man. Well, a couple more things before we wrap up here. I wanted to ask, you got a couple bigger events kind of coming back this year and a new one, and I want to jump into Weyburn here. So it's a new event coming up, the Oil Kings and Outlaw Buckers and Oil Kings match bronc riding. It's kind of the first event of its kind in Saskatchewan. I think it's a really big deal, lots of money added, kind of going to be a really cool event, backed by the Saskatchewan Oil and Gas Show. So talk a bit about that, what people can expect heading into the first annual.
Yeah, it's exciting. And we're not that far away. Like it's June 4th. So it's coming. And I said if it so long story short, Robert Schmidt called me and said, "Hey, do you want to help me with this bronc riding?" Over the years we've talked about, should we do something in Estevan? Should we do something in Weyburn and whichever? And he'd kind of mentioned to me about maybe doing a bull riding with the Oil and Gas Show. And then a few months later, he called me and said, "I think we're gonna do a bronc riding, and we want to make it a good big bronc riding. And would you come and help us out?" And I said, "Yeah, let's do it." So obviously Jonathan Comita's involved, and Outlaw Buckers is the main stock contractor, and we got the Calgary Stampede coming and C5. So we're putting our best foot forward as far as the stock goes. We plan for it to be world class, and we went out on a limb and added $30,000 in prize money. So wanted to make it obviously one of the biggest bronc matches there is. And try to get those, top guys to come to it. But I think it'll be cool. And like you said, there's not something like this that they've had in Saskatchewan, definitely not down in the southeast corner of Saskatchewan. In conjunction with the oil show is a really cool element, and just being able to involve that crowd, which is a great crossover crowd as well.
Yeah.
But then even just for the community of Weyburn to bring an event like this to Weyburn is going to be cool. And so, again, like I said to Robert, I said, "Hey man, if you want me to be involved, we got to go big or go home." And so I called Robert. I said, we need a TV commentator. We need a host for TV. And he said, "What are you thinking?" I said, "We got to get Butch Knowles." He said, "Oh, Butch Knowles, really? You think he'd come up there?" I said, "I hope he would." I said, "I'll call him and ask him." And so sure enough, Butch said he'd come up. So Butch is coming, and we're gonna do our best to put together a proper TV broadcast of the event. And obviously the live event is going to be we're going to do some pretty cool stuff there too. And yeah, we're going to try and make it different, but we're going to try to put on a bronc match that is great for the community, great for the oil and gas show, but also again, like hopefully it's great for the sport of rodeo, and especially rodeo in Canada.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be exciting, man. I'm stoked to get back down there and kind of see what an event of that scale looks like in Saskatchewan. I think it's gonna be really cool, and we're gonna have some big rides, and it's gonna be great. So the next thing on the list is the Lethbridge Pro Rodeo. I know it's coming back for another year. I'm sure you guys got some pretty cool stuff planned. What can you tell us about the Lethbridge Pro Rodeo?
Yeah, we're going again. So third year that we've had the SMS Tour Rodeo back as a pro rodeo, and same thing. We're just trying to build out the event for the community every year, a little bit bigger. Do some different things. We've got we've created what we're calling the Winner Circle Club, which is the VIP sponsor area down right on the track side. So there's going to be some pretty cool elements to that. Of course, we have the relay races with the rodeo, which I could stand to be corrected, but I think we're still the only pro rodeo in Canada that has the relay races with the actual rodeo, not after, not with the chuck wagons, not in the afternoon, but during the rodeo. And so that's kind of become, I think one of the uniquenesses of the rodeo, and it's a 2-for-1 ticket. And if nobody's seen relay racing and they come and see it, they're like, holy, like I came for the rodeo, but I did not expect that. And
yeah, it's a cool element.
Yeah. And, so I think for us, it's just kind of keep building on that and try to build up bigger and better event every year. And they open a new convention center in Lethbridge last fall. And so the Agri-Food Hub is rocking and rolling, and they've had some awesome events in there. And so it's great to be able to utilize a venue like that for their whoop up days, for their parade, or for their fair. So it's a really cool element. That's another thing. When people come there, they go, man, like I didn't expect to see this building. Like it's world class. And then, I mean, outside of the rodeo, they've put together a pretty cool lineup of artists. They got Kyle McCurney coming the first night. And yeah, I seen Kyle McCurney first time live at the Alberta Country Music Awards that I was producing. And man, that guy is impressive. Like
Nice.
I was a fan. Like holy, great artist. So yeah, and then like Big Sugar. Man, like, I'm excited. I'm excited for that stuff. So yeah, like I said, it's a great event, and awesome community down there in Lethbridge, and it's a cool rodeo. If nobody has been to the Lethbridge Pro Rodeo in the last few years, that's worth going to for sure. So
Yeah, man, that's awesome. It's shaping up to be an awesome season, and I think that's gonna do it
yeah.
for fans. It's been fun to sit around, shoot the shit, and catch up. It'll be fun to obviously see in a few weeks here in Weyburn, but I'm sure we'll talk quite a bit between now and then. So thanks for the time today, Kynan.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good, Wacey. Thanks for having me on.
Right on. Cool. This has been episode 13, the short round. We'll be right back after this.
Alrighty, welcome back to the short round. Thanks once again to Kynan Vine for joining me. It was great to catch up, and we'll definitely be seeing him down the road this summer. We're heading into the May long weekend. We got kind of, I think, one of my favorite rodeos on the entire schedule, Pro Rodeo, coming this weekend. We got the Falkland Stampede. It's the Falkland Stampede, the 104th edition of the Falkland Stampede, which makes it one of Canada's oldest stampedes. You have your iconic picture of you on war cry hanging behind you from the Falkland Stampede. What can you tell me about what we can expect this weekend out in the Okanagan?
Yeah, it is just that there's so many cool things about that town, that rodeo, just everything about it. I had a lot of luck there. It just seemed, again, that's where I filled my pro card. I placed there quite a few other times, and just always a good rodeo. I think, again, it's tougher now for guys when there isn't Luxton anymore, and Cloverdale, I mean, has been its own thing for a while. It can be tough to go, but I think so many guys just and girls know how good of a rodeo that is, and the effort that they put on to put that rodeo on, and it makes it so you say, you know what, this early in the year, why not? I mean,
Yeah.
the hardest part is getting through that mudslide some years. Yeah,
Oh,
but
it's
yeah,
funny because
no.
it's kind of like Alberta out there. Like I lived in BC for the past year, so I kind of got a good. I spent my last two May longs. So my girlfriend and her friends, they usually camp. It's probably 20 minutes ish to the west of Falkland. So we go camp there at the past two May longs. So the weather is so variable there. It's kind of like Canada, but it can be so nice, or it can be kind of shitty. But hopefully the weather is like nice stuff. And it's a good place to go. Like I think it's like kind of like one of the closer things we got to like an American style like rodeo. It's like grandstands are set up and how it all works out. It's a really cool setup there.
Yeah, it definitely fits in. As much like you get out to some of those BC rodeos and they feel more like you're in Washington or those places and everything. And yeah, I mean, it's just compared to Alberta, where towns are kind of set up in a block and stuff. You get out into BC and you just get that one highway that just stretches through. And I mean, you're walking up and down that highway to go to the restaurant in town or to go to the dance after the rodeo and stumbling back
Walk
and
over to the saloon.
yeah, that saloon is pretty epic. I
It's
know that
so cool, man.
bikers and stuff rolling in and out of there too.
Yeah.
But
Oh
yeah,
man,
yeah,
it's good.
no,
And it seems like it's just been picking up momentum since it's been back. Like after, like post COVID, like the crowds are getting bigger and bigger. Like I've talked to Dennis Halstead a few times about this, and just how he says like every year they jam more and more people into that little infield, whatever you want to call it, and they get really good content there too. Like a lot of good contests. They add like a pretty decent amount of money. Good contestants roll through there. Moxes bring really good stock. Like it's just kind of like Armstrong in the sense where it just has that recipe of just there's something a little bit of like magic or whatever you want to call it in the Falkland arena or something. Like I don't know. It's hard to explain if you had never been there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's still got that real small town feel. Like
Yeah.
Armstrong, it's a great big feeling. Like they're right on top of you. And it's such a cool rodeo in the night
Mhm.
and everything like that. Whereas Falkland, it's again a great rodeo and everything, but again, at the same time, it's just got that like, yeah, long-standing traditional feel and
Mhm.
everything. So it's such a yeah, it's again one of those ones that grateful to have a lot of good memories out of that over the years. So
Well, another big kind of event on the schedule that we won't get to talk about, and that's kind of overlaps our podcasting schedule is the Buffalo Lake Stampede. It's kind of the first. It is the first stop on the SMS Pro Tour. It's kind of it last year was the first year it's been back, and or the first year that they brought it to the schedule, and it's become one of the bigger rodeos in the country, and it's kind of the unofficial kickoff of the SMS Pro Tour kind of schedule. So what can we what do we need to know about Buffalo Lake, Clay?
yeah, I think again, this is just another one of those spots. It just really goes to show, I mean, the focus that the C5 company there between Tyson and Vern and Jillian, how they can make something happen that not every contractor and outfit can. I mean, this rodeo sprung up from a rodeo grounds that hadn't really been doing a lot in a long time, and I mean they put it together, and again to start year one as a tour rodeo and everything, it
It's
just
not
goes to
easy to
show.
do that. Like there's so many rodeos work their way up to be a tour, like have to like work their way to be able to
Oh
add that much money, right? Like it's not like that. It's
yeah,
the $8,000 added per event threshold, right? Just something like my
yes,
number straight. So
yes.
it's not easy for communities to get that money together. So to become a tour rodeo on your first year, coming off of like not having a rodeo for how long in the community, it's pretty a remarkable achievement.
For sure. And I think just the local area just gets behind that. And rodeo is a big part of that northern territory. And I mean, again, there's many McDonald's in that country that have a huge tradition in the sport and in the buck and horse end of things. And just yeah, it's great to see pro rodeo have a footprint there and really doing something. So no, I think it's
Mhm.
again after year one, I'm sure they hit the drawing board as soon as it was done and wrote down everything that they wanted to do bigger and better the next year, and it'll be a great one, I'm sure, this year. So
Well, and one thing I guess we should mention is that you'll be able to keep up with like all of the SMS tour rodeos on the Cowboy Channel for sure. I think Falkland's going to be on there this weekend. I have to double check the schedule, but just check your Cowboy Channel Plus app or your Cowboy Channel schedule, and you can actually watch all these rodeos on the Cowboy Channel. So you don't have to listen to us give you our very in-depth analysis that we we usually tend to give. But it's kind of a neat way, like we talked about with Denny Phipps last show, that we have that access just to keep up with Canadian Pro Rodeo and get to watch it with our own eyes. So it's gonna be a fun way to kind of keep tabs on the season as we move through and head towards the 50th edition of the CFR.
you bet. Yeah. I pulled up the draw here for
Yeah.
Falkland and just a few matchups that I see in the bronc ride and bareback ride, and I see again, Tyrell Roberts is drawing Squash Blossom Steely Dan, which
Mm-hmm.
they won a ton of money on that horse in the States, and I just expect that to be a really a
He's a
really
guy who's
solid
gonna
matchup.
take another step this year. I think like we saw him kind of starting to do that at the end of last year into the CFR, but now we look it's going to be time for him to kind of take that next step to become one of the top guys in the country.
For sure. And that big gray horse looks like a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be a good matchup, a little tougher matchup. But again, our
Mm-hmm.
top guy in Canada right now, Dawson Dom's got Call Me Kendra, which that horse is, it's a mittful. I know my in the bareback ride, and that horse is always a mittful, and his transition into the bronc ride and much the same. But
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
anybody's going to make a really good ride. I think Dawson's definitely going to do good there in that final perf. And
Oh yeah, it'll be good. It'll be some good watching in Falcon this weekend.
for sure. And in the bareback riding, again, anytime you get on Stevie Nicks in Falkland, it seems to be magic. And
She
Cole
likes to
Goodine,
see that old horse.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I know I can remember when Jake Vold was a bunch of points out there quite a few years ago now when she was just pretty young, and Cole Goodine I know will be pretty happy to have her there. So
Yeah,
that'll
good to see him back on the trail too. You know, he's been kind of banged up and not going as hard as he usually does. So hopefully he
yeah.
can put something together out there in BC this weekend.
Yeah, no, for sure. Dougie's boy is. I'm hoping for good things there for Doug and Judy's kid.
Rock and roll for sure, man. Well, Clay, I think it's gonna do it for the show this week. I think we kind of covered all the bases we need to cover, and we'll kind of leave it at that till the next one.
You bet. Sounds good. And again, thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, buddy, it's been fun. It's been fun to kind of for us to evolve and build a relationship this way. It's been really fun to have you kind of part of this journey for. I think I only did 2 episodes that year, so 11 episodes now. I think we've had to, or maybe 10 we could call it. But anyways, I'll stop rambling. This has been the 12th episode of the Short Round Podcast. Be sure to keep up with everything pro rodeo on our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, the website, where we got news and news you can use pumping out all the time. And we will see you all on the next show.